Good afternoon, and welcome to this amazing session 6 of this encounter that we have scheduled ourselves and we have committed ourselves to put forth the studies of the book Plenitude by Joanna de Angelis. As Kirsten was saying, this is meant to be just highlights, just a way for us to connect, not necessarily have to study, not necessarily have to connect with the last sessions or that we have presented, but it's good to watch. It's good to have the background, as well as to pick up the book, read it, study. Because if we don't do it, I can say a million things here to you, but if you don't study and read it and feel it and bring it to your heart, it's just going to be another bunch of words, okay? So the invitation stands, and I will repeat again over and over and over as we go through the next 6 sessions. But tonight, we give continuation, as we said. We have already visited several of the chapters listed here for you. From 1 to 7, suffering, an analysis of suffering, the origins of suffering, the end of suffering, approaches to end suffering, altruism, causes of suffering, and tonight we will visit pathways to health. Recently, I came across a passage of, as I was doing an analysis, a financial analysis for school, a preparation for a project, and one of the professors who it was actually a video that I was watching. He said something really interesting, that if we are following of what others are doing, we have to ask ourselves, is that right? If everybody is saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the idea of financial, because it applies to our lives, right? If everybody's buying, let's say, ABC Inc. stocks, ABC Inc., let's say, sells computers, and their product is amazing, and everybody's buying stock of ABC Inc. because their computers are amazing. Is that the right thing to do? Well, a common answer, yes, they have great computers. They have a great product. Let's buy their stock. They're doing well. They will be doing well. But is that everything? Is that the whole picture, right? So if we follow the crowd just because they're buying a product, or a stock because of the company's product, we're not looking at the big picture. So we may be missing out on something. We may be getting into something that it's not the right thing, right? And connecting with another message, and we'll apply this later on. We'll go back to this idea. Connecting with another interesting message that we discussed at one of our guided homes. In this amazing book, Living Spring, by Emmanuel, the author says the following. This is the title. Go beyond what others do. Go beyond what others do. And the message, I'm not going to read the whole thing. The message is based on this simple verse from Matthew chapter 5, verse 46. Do not tax collectors do the same? And the message goes by, tax collectors at the time, right? The publicans, they respect the law. They were, quote unquote, righteous individuals. They respect those among themselves. They did everything that they were told to do, much like ourselves. We do everything that others are doing. We're a product of the environment. And I'm not afraid to say it, because there are a lot of things that I need to change. And I think this message tonight will come and help us and say, wait a minute, everybody's doing this. Everybody's buying this stock. But what can I do better? Or how can I do this better? The quote-unquote politics, these individuals, that individual, my group of people that I live, my family, my co-workers. And again, I'm applying this to myself as well, because when I read this chapter and I study, it really makes us think to take our life to the next step, to diminish because we're not going to be able to change what we have done in the past. The consequences of what we have done in the past, we're not going to be able to stop them because they just keep rolling. As much as whatever I do today, the consequences are positive consequences because the acts of today, the consequences of the acts of today will be positive because the acts of today are a little bit more positive. So what does this have to do with pathways to health? Let's see. Juana de Angelis starts the chapter this way. Due to the individual's incomplete moral development, suffering is the road to spiritual redemption. We already saw this, and she keeps going back. By the way, this chapter is a little bit more on a positive note. We're not going to talk too much directly about the suffering as we have studied, but she makes the reference back to it. Look, if we want to live a better life, we need to change. And she gives 8 tips, amazing tips, and we're going to get there. A personal choice, it is a road devoid of punitive action. Rather, it educates or re-educates using the same mechanism through which the individual incurred moral strayed off course or disregarded the laws of life in the first place. Suffering prevails as long as purification is necessary. The only exceptions entail collective enlightenment, that is, when the missionaries of love in the good plunge into the world's darkness in order to illuminate it with their examples. Since they no longer need moral and physical pain, they choose or accept it as a willing hardship in order to teach courage, selflessness, and sacrifice to those engaged in the ignorance, illusion, rebellion, violence, selfishness, and denial of duty, all being causes of suffering, sickness, and pain. Why am I reading this whole thing? It's quite a bit, right? But let's go back and take this as an example. And she sets the tone by saying, look, if we are suffering, it's because we still need to purify ourselves. There is a purification in the sense that we need to fix something of the past, right? Not as a consequence in the terms of we have to suffer, but in the consequence, now you have to make it right. If I go to anybody's house here and make a mess in the kitchen, what will guys expect me to do? Clean after myself. The kitchen may be a mess, but if somebody else goes in there and makes a different mess, that's my mess. I have to clean it. It's just an example. Imagine this in our lives. If we do something wrong, we have to go back and clean it. The same way is that it's the only way that we will be able to repair the life of others. There is a way for us to redo it, so we learn it, and there is a way also to make amends to that situation that you create on someone else's life. Now, why do missionaries come back and deal with the mess and when they don't have to? Number one, they have mastered what we're going to talk about tonight. So they don't feel suffering. They don't see the hardships of life the way we see it. Because even though they're immersed in the situation, in the mess of the kitchen, in the mess of, let's say, a workplace sometimes when we feel that, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right? Let's just bring, I don't want anybody to suffer here or start to suffer, but let's think of a situation that is very detrimental to us. A mentor comes and they look at it and say, oh, calm, let's be calm. We see examples through the many books they have mastered. As long as people are not persuaded to seek balance, that is, the optimal homeostasis between the psyche and the physical body, they will remain entangled in all kinds of suffering. Suffering is a warning indicating a deviation from the path of harmony and appears in the form of compromised, blocked, or unbalanced energy, promoting the onset of all kinds of diseases, misfortune, and woes. I remember very clear, we had a talk with Dr. It's Kirsten or Yask or Daniel, who I believe you guys were there, at Bruscombe. He was what's the name of the doctor that we had a talk with? And he was he, Hindenburg, I think, right? That was Peter Hindenburg, yes. He said something really interesting that I connect with because, when you drive in a car and that engine light comes on, what do? Thank you. You take a black strip or something, or you put a marker and you kind of like go in there and avoid it, some way to avoid that light. No, you stop and you take the car to the shop, right? And he was referring to the stuff that we buy, the remedies that we buy, the whatever we go, what is prescribed to us, and we see that black tape around the medicine and whatnot. But the sufferings of our lives is just the car engine that is coming up, and we need to stop and think, okay, what am I doing wrong? Or what have I done wrong? Because we're still doing a lot of errors. A lot of stuff that we're going through right now, it's not that we are facing the past yet. More consequences of the current ideals that we have, right? So we have to rethink about that. Oh, I'm rescuing something from the past. Well, think twice. Perhaps you're still, dealing with today's stuff. And one day we'll be able to move on. But the idea again is that if you see that red light or the suffering coming up, we have to do something. We have to change. Take yourself to the shop of analyzing yourself, thinking, and we'll see one of the ways that we can do this at the end, and rethink, recharge yourself, because that suffering may be an enlightening path for you that you're going through. So I would like to move on a little bit more now and say benevolence towards everyone, indulgence towards the imperfection of others, and forgiveness for offenses is the true meaning of the word charity as Jesus understood it. I know we have seen it, but bring again. This is exactly what Joanna the Angel brings to us in reference to what charity is and what charity does for us. It's interesting, right? Because we think that I have to do charity to become a better person. But by doing charity, what happens to me? What is my environment like when I'm being charitable? We don't think much about that, right? But also, on top of that, to do charity, you have to reach a certain state of mind, heart, the environment, right? Everything, just for us to be here tonight, we had to get ourselves together, change, do all kinds of things to get here. So there is a preparation for charity as well. So when we do charity, for charity, love, in its highest expression, to be authentic, it requires the illumination of those who practice, affording them at the same time a constant refinement of purposes that lead to self-denial and victory over the primitive dominant tendencies. Centuries ago, Buddha recommended an eightfold path for salvation. These 8 steps are indispensable for enlightenment through love and plenitude through happiness. I'll take a step back. And Joanna the Angel is as we have mentioned, is studying the Buddhist ideals along with the Christ thought, the Christ willingness to bring us into a better state of life, to plenitude, right? And bring Spiritism along with the messages to say this is what we need to be, or this is what we need to do in order for us to be better individuals. So she brings Christ, saying, here's an example that for him to do what he did, he had to get into the state of mind, of heart, with higher minds. And the same, we'll see that as we do it, we connect with higher minds. And she brings Buddha with these 8 beautiful examples over here of life. Believing rightly, wanting rightly, talking rightly, operating rightly, living rightly, correct effort, thinking rightly, and meditating rightly. Take a look at it. Have you mastered any of these? Have you thought about really diving to these ideals and saying, okay, I'm going to work on this? Some scholars, they say that You can do one and kind of like, I shouldn't say disregard, but you can do better in one and still work on others. And some others, they say, they all work together. And I think this is also what Joanna Jones is bringing to us. The way she brings the 8 pathways, they work together. There's no way that you can believe rightly and you want in a different way. They have to go hand in hand. Our perception about life will change. And our perception about these ways or steps to become a better individuals will change. But you have to do the right thing. They have to be positive, number one. And you have to exclude the negative. So that's one point of that I would like to bring to you. As we're bringing these 8 steps tonight, I would like to remind you, and you please remind me as we go through our questions and comments at the end, that to exclude the negative, to acknowledge the negative that we are doing right now so we can replace with something positive. Because sometimes it's easier for us to think about what is not than to think what is the correct way. Because we have to acknowledge what is wrong, right? Because if you go into this idea, oh, nothing's wrong, then you're not changing anything. You're not going to do anything differently. So believing rightly. What is to believe? What is, when we think about believing rightly, why number one, we think about the idea that we bring believing right? Because we could have said thinking rightly, right? Because a thought comes before the belief. But we'll see a little bit more, and then we'll understand what she's trying to say. Again, these are Buddhist ideals. So it's not Joanna de Angelis bringing this to us. She's taking these teachings from a much older religion and showing to us that is the teachings, God's teachings, is everywhere. Believing rightly. Human beings always believe, even in that which they deny. It's kind of contradicting, but it is true. When the children, when they deny that there's the evil, but they believe that there is something in the closet. They believe, and we do too. We have the monsters in the closet that sometimes we don't want to deal with it, but there's a belief that there is something there. We deny it. Their very act of denying is a form of believing, which they defend with enthusiasm and vigor. Denial, therefore, is a type of affirmation that demonstrates a natural or rational belief concerning their conviction. Once more, why do we bring this and not other parts of the book? Because it's important that we bring this foundation, which is the first verse of when she's talking about believing rightly, because we believe. There is no way for any of us to argue, oh, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in this. You believe in something. And just the idea of believing something, then you can change that focus or that ideal, that energy, whatever it is that you want to call it, and believe in something right, and believing rightly. Believing rightly, however, means directing the thought in a positive, uplifting way, anchoring in sound purposes conducive to the successful achievement of the principles one believes in. This is a stimulating belief that lends beauty to life's mechanism and sets it in motion, deeply altering one's behavior for the better and proposing a life based on the power of faith. And then we go back and we rescue a passage, an amazing passage of the Gospel according to Spiritism on chapter 19, saying that faith, the mother of all hope and charity. In verse 11, we'll see that in order to be profitable, faith must be active. It must not grow numb. Mother of all virtues that lead to God, it must watch carefully over the development of the children it generates. So without faith, there is no other virtue, because from there springs everything else. Develop everything else. We have talked about faith before. We have mentioned simple ways for us to develop this or to organize our thoughts in a way that we evolve a little bit better in this idea of believing or being faithful. That if you get up in the morning and you don't have the faith that the day will be positive, we're not going to go anywhere. Why did we get up and we had the faith that the presenter tonight was going to present something positive? And this is when we bring the rational. I know you guys are looking at me like, you putting yourself in this spot. But at least we know that we're going to come to this place that will be an organization, right? That will be a coherent environment between ourselves, talking about something positive, that whether the presenter does a good job or not, we know that we're going to be in a safe and secure environment. I'm just bringing some rationals for us, right? So why not applying this in our lives? Why let our belief, why let our faith straight into something that, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, you do know. If God takes care of, and we'll see this passage here, Joanna Jones brings to us, if God helps the animals, right? Why wouldn't God help us? Yes, we may argue too that, well, we make choices. We have free will. We have this, we have that. But ultimately, if we don't have this guidance, we wouldn't be here today. So let us think of how we are believing, how faithful we are towards our endeavors, towards ourselves. And let us stop putting or charging people with our failures because we don't believe rightly, because we don't have this eager to change our environment. And she always brings Jesus and many others as an example as well when she brings these 8 pathways to health. And remember, it's almost, I would say, 99% of chance that you will be able to do one thing and not do the other. They all work together. Wanting rightly, the second one. What do you want of life? When I was reading this, it's like, what do I want from life? What is she talking about? I believe. Check that off. But believing in what? And what do I want to get out of life? And consequently, to give to life as well. In general. Ask that question. What do I want from life? It's very easy for us to respond to, oh, I want to buy this, I want to receive this, I want health, But for what? What's the purpose behind? What do I want this for? And what kind of foundation do I have to back up this, let's call it need, or be more direct, the want, what I want, right? Believing rightly leads to wanting rightly. One of the causes of human suffering is wanting wrongly, true to the illusion of immediate and delusional pleasure, which chooses the expendable in detriment of the essential, the temporary rather than the permanent. And to get it, people act out their negative tendencies, compromising themselves morally and spiritually. Bringing the point of being materialistic way more than we are spiritualist. And it's not the sense of, oh, I'm going to sit and I'm not going to eat this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to exclude myself from, the craziness of the world. Well, that may be a way, and I respect. But how frugal are we? How helpful are we with ourselves that we limit ourselves on our day-to-day endeavors, on what we want? And truly say, okay, is this really what I want, or is this what I need? Because she's explaining, and she have mentioned that a lot of our sufferings coming from us going overboard. We'll have our dinner tonight. If we eat too much, you will have an indigestion. Right? Limit yourself. Let us limit ourselves. Because we did not come here for that. Wanting rightly proposes methods compatible with the goals of one's belief. Once more, they go hand in hand. Incorrect means are not justifiable for noble purposes because they denigrate ideals which must remain pure. Without the use of corresponding means, achievements lose their otherwise praiseworthy quality. So if I believe that I will have having a foolish life, and I'll leave it up to you to interpret what foolish means. We all have our ways to interpret. How can I want the right things for me and for others? And what kind of consequences will I receive believing that way in a life that will follow such a path? I will want a lot of things, but they won't be of good use to me or to others. We also bring another passage of the Gospel according to Spiritism in chapter 17, verse 5. The door to perdition is wide because the evil passions are many, and the pathway to evil is frequented by most. The door to salvation is narrow because those who want to go through it must make a great effort to control themselves in order to overcome their evil tendencies, and few resign themselves to do so. It is the complement to the maxim, many are called, but few are chosen. Choices, choices, choices. It's easy for us to want a mundane life and obtain it. And it's very hard for us to go through the narrow door, because we have to leave a lot behind. We have to avoid a lot of things that sometimes we want. We think that we need, but we're really going overboard. Moving on. Talking rightly. A question that I asked myself: what kind of conversations we have had throughout this week? What kind of conversation we had today? And I'm going to take a step back. What kind of thoughts you have? Perhaps you're not saying as I'm speaking right now, but you're saying in your mind. You wanted to say it to someone, but you didn't say it verbalizing it, but you said it. You constructed. And I think that you can get, thinking rightly, and we'll see that, but what kind of conversations you held? Were they positive, but were they of good intent? Or how did you also say it, even though it was something positive? Let's read a little bit. When one believes and truly wants to believe rightly, one uses words that reflect that fact. And according to the gospel, such words manifest what the heart is filled with. An example. I love when the kids sometimes come to me and say, I can't do this. This is too hard. Why are you verbalizing? We all know it's too hard. You're not telling me anything new. I know it's hard. We all know it's hard. But why not take that message that you just verbalized, that energy that you just verbalized, and say, this is hard, but I'm going to get it. Or to say, I will get this. Avoid the negative. I was talking to a young lady at work, and we were analyzing a test that we had to develop, work on, and obviously work on the results, make amendments to it, and so on and so forth. And she was evaluating herself on the whole scheme of things. And she asked me, how did I do? And I turned to her and say, how did you do? How do you think you did? And she started saying this and this and this and this and this and this and that. And I'm listening to her. I would say 80% of or 90% of what she said about herself was negative. But what she was truly trying to convey was that she got something positive of it. She went over all the negative stuff. And I learned that, and I noticed this, and I did this. Okay, well, isn't that positive? It's not that you're going to paint the picture differently, but you will analyze the situation, whether you had some learning experiences, but in a positive way. Sometimes we say things and we feel the dreading, right? Or sometimes we're in a conversation, we're talking to someone, we feel the negativity the way they're presenting things to you. And yes, a lot of what we are experiencing in our lives are difficult things. Planet of trial and expiation. Guess what? We're here to learn. We're here to redo. We're here to fix it. Clean the mess. But the way we're talking, It's not conducive to the way we're supposed to believe. It's not conducive to the way we're supposed to want things for our lives. Therefore, living the higher aspirations inwardly is essential to that the symphony of one's words may rightly convey than outwardly. Words are a valuable communication tool that has paralyzed many great ideals of humanity for not being true to the sentiments that should be expressed. People talk for the sake of talking. They talk in order to conceal emotions and ideals. They talk with sordid or harmful purposes in mind. I'm not saying it, Joanna the Angel is saying. So we can avoid the negativity and start implementing positive things, positive ways to say things. And again, I'm including myself on this. Because it's easy for us to pick up when somebody else is talking to you, but when we are saying, it's very hard. It's very hard because you're in the heat of the moment, you're in the situation, you didn't think, you didn't prepare yourselves. But if we got up in the morning and we start thinking, today is going to be a good day, you have that belief. So what do I want for today? Then you start changing because you're going to say positive things to yourself and you're going to act accordingly, which we'll see next. The words that liberate can also enslave. Therefore, the art of talking entails requisites that are essential for expressing oneself rightly. Talking should be discerning, knowing how and when to say something, and it should avoid causing embarrassment and resentment. Pretty difficult things to do nowadays, right? And it's only the first 3. We have 5 more. 5 more. Operating rightly. What does Joanna the Angelus is trying to say by operating rightly? We want and we speak. Now it's time to do what? Act. Do it. Right? Because if you have the positive intent and you verbalizing it, consequently, the actions will be positive. Because you can say, it's funny because you can sometimes say negative things and you catch yourself and you do something positive, or you correct yourself, but most likely if you say something positive, you will do something positive. Look how we are changing the mentality. Look how we are changing the course of life. And it may be something small, as Joanna de Angelo also brings in this chapter, that the changes of life happens very small. And it should happen small if we want to get to higher endeavors. But chances are, if you believe rightly, you want the best life for yourself and for others, and you speak accordingly, you will operate in the same manner. Rightness is necessary at every step of human life. A tranquil heart is the result of right conduct and, consequently, a fundamental factor for a peaceful conscience. The world has always progressed thanks to those who act uprightly. Past examples of their dedication to worldly causes have become the basis for the enhancements of life and other people. And we encompass other people as well. It's not just for myself, because as we act accordingly, act in a positive way, we'll be changing other lives as well. Conscious of the responsibility, they did not fear persecution, harsh struggles, sacrifices, and even death when necessary, if it meant that their ideal would remain pure. They knew that the death of the body cannot destroy a grand idea, and that it is in the blood of the martyr that the seed of truth germinates in order to sprout and grow at a later time, producing a blessing of blossom and fruit. And we can sit here all day and give great examples. But one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you as well tonight is the fact of the small things that we do in life. The mothers, the parents, the fathers as well, a colleague, a friend who extended hand, who does something right in their lives that affects you. Even though they take themselves out of their ways, even though they do something that you look at and say, why did that person do that? When they were putting themselves behind the situation, behind the curtains. And there are examples in all of our lives If we're here today, incarnated, guess what? Somebody sacrificed for us. There was a sacrifice made to all of us. It makes us think. It surely makes us think, because again, when Joana de Angelis mentions the martyrs, yes, it's a level up here. But if we start with the small things, being appreciative to these small things in life, guess what? We'll be able to aim it, and say, if that person can do it, I can do it too. If I can do it, you all can do it. Operating rightly is a real challenge when living among sickly individuals and in an unjust society. I couldn't agree anymore. Something else that I usually talk to the kids about it. Why you're sick? They're sneezing, they're coughing. Why you're sick? Well, everybody's sick in school. Well, everybody, but you're not everybody. And I know that we are exposed to the elements. We have a physical body. We get, sometimes, with friends and all, and we get sick. But why do I have to get sick? Why do I allow myself? Why do I dispose of my energy, allowing myself to get sick? In this case here, why do I look at the wrong things and I believe that I have to do the same? And why not take that energy and say, well, everybody's doing. Remember the message at the beginning. Everybody's doing it, but I don't have to do it. I don't have to do it. I can choose better, or I can choose differently. I'm going to try something different, because guess what? That is not winning anymore. Perhaps it was something of the past, but not anymore. Giving continuation, living rightly. And we know, when I read it first, it seems like, wait a minute, operating isn't the same thing as living? It's a different way of thinking in terms of being positive in our lives. Those who act rightly live rightly. Their today depicts their previous actions, and their tomorrow will be the result of their present ones. A consequence. They do not hide in error. They do not get overexcited or depressed. Stop over here. Operating is one thing, because we know that perhaps the law may say A, and you acting according to law, but what can you do better, right? What can you do better? Now, let us think in terms of your life in general now. What are you doing with your life? Because there are certain things that we program, that we believe, that we act appropriately, that we speak appropriately, right? But the results are not what we were expecting. Hence, what she's saying over here. We don't get overexcited, and we don't get depressed. We know that this is the pathway that we have to go through, and we stick with it. And we continue to live our lives in the right way. Because there are a lot of things happening. We're bombarded with many things that will push us down. We'll say the contrary, or you're wrong, or this is not the right way, and we let our guards down. Gandhi put forth racial equality and equal rights and duties. However, for his ideals to be truly respected, he lived accordingly, working at the loom and welcoming pariahs at his ashram, granting them the same consideration as any other person. This is another spin that Joana de Angelis brings to this idea of living rightly, right? We come to the center, we study all these things. We go to the church, we know the laws, but are we truly acting accordingly? Are we walking, in that sense, the talk, right? That it's, I can't remember now the speaker that I came across this week as well on YouTube, Facebook, and that was talking about the things that we share perhaps in social media, the things that we actually talk to one another, the way we treat one another, the way we treat people on the street as well, isn't in accordance to what we learn with Spiritism. One is here and the other is here. or the other way around. The teachings are up here and we're acting a completely different way. And we want the world to change as well. We emphasize that it must change. The new era must come, right? As we stated earlier, Jesus did not have a stone on which to lay his head, even though the birds in the sky had their nests and the beasts their dens, because for him only one thing was important: giving of himself in a world of things that are worth only what is attributed to them, for they have no intrinsic value. Such a life requires a great effort because wide is the door that leads to destruction, as we have mentioned. Always bringing Jesus' teachings with these 8 insights that Buddhism brings to us as well. And Gandhi is a great example as well to all of us on how to live accordingly. So we talk about what? The faith, the wanting, the speaking, the operational way of life, and the way we're supposed to live. We have a couple more. Correct effort. We have all this idea, all the beautiful things in the morning that we're thinking, oh, today I'm going to go to the center and all. We have to put effort, right? It's interesting when people sometimes they ask, how are you doing? And I usually like to joke, if I complain, nobody's going to listen, and I can take that energy and apply it into something positive, right? Think of this way. We put effort for a lot of things. Everything in life requires effort. Even to sit on a couch and do nothing, it requires effort. Because to the point that you cannot do that anymore, and you have to be active, you have to be doing something. If you worry about things in your life and you can't sit on the couch anymore, that already tells you that that effort that we used to spend sitting on the couch is not worth it anymore. So why put the effort to complain? Why put the effort to do things in our lives that are negative, that is not connected to what the other points that we have seen? What kind of effort we're putting forth? Without effort, no endeavor is possible, much less successful. Intensity of effort reveals quality of character. Without disciplining strength by exertion, effort vanishes and aspirations die. So we can have everything laid out, but if we don't put our effort into it, it's not going to happen. About, when was it, Kirsten, that Sarah was talking about went to do a talk in New York 3-4 weeks ago, I think, more or less. And it was beautiful watching the kids and the effort that they put onto suicide prevention. And one of the things that I got from the pieces and bits that, because I was actually studying as well on that day, from the talks, is the effort that sometimes we don't put forth to continue. Because sometimes we like to start projects, we like to start things in our lives, but to give continuation is the hardest part ever. You start something with somebody, and then in the middle of the way, you abandon. Oh, it's too hard for me. Oh, I don't like this anymore. It got old. Well, it got old. I get it. But did you train somebody to continue that work? Because the same way you were developed to do that work, you can develop someone else, and someone else will be able to benefit from, or to learn from it. And we see also great people that they start something, they continue for the rest of their lives. They discarnate and they continue overseeing it, the work of it, right? As a justification for not making an effort, it is often said that it is not possible to maintain the optimal level of one's ideals. However, the practice of bad habits occurs through efforts naturally incorporated into everyday life. Taking a negative example here, to rob a bank. There's effort, not only of one person, usually a lot of individuals, right? To do something wrong, it takes a lot of effort. Effort that many of us, and I'll exclude the fear of the law, we wouldn't put forth. We wouldn't even think about, oh, if I do this, I'm going to go to jail. Or if I do this, I'm going to be reprimanded. Or society. No, because of the effort. Now, I don't want to do this. I don't want to spend my energy doing this negative act. We're already there. Now, how do we take to the next level? Frequently, due to the pleasures of their addictions, individuals make enormous sacrifices and use every means conceivable to continue the enslaving sensations. However, if anyone suggests a change to long-term fulfillment, they refuse to make the effort because they are comfortable as is, even if it is ruining their lives. Which one of the Angelus words? In a well-directed effort, one's energies are reinvigorated and one's motivations, since they are of higher nature, attract new endeavors that suppress one's limitations and the stress of suffering. Let's go back to what we said of what happens to us when we are being charitable. Any of these acts, any of these pathways, if you are engaging them, number one, you're being charitable to yourself and to others. And the return that you get out of it is much better. Let us connect with the investment. Perhaps we want a quick investment or return on our investment. A quick profit, thank you. Right? But let's take the shorter or much straighter door that perhaps will take a long time for you to get a return, a profit, but you know that profit will be there for sure. Being charitable is not that it's just going to make you great in terms of you showing to society that it's going to come back. The connections that we will make is much higher than the connections than we have right now. So it's a twofold thing there. The mind, fixed at a higher level, numbs the sensations of imbalances and infirmities and emulates the acquisition of harmony, which is achieved through rightly applied effort. It's all connected. It's all connected. So then we move on to the last two. Thinking rightly. How do you think rightly? What is to think rightly? Nobody ever told me that. Seriously, our parents, they teach us how to walk, not to touch certain things, but they tell you, don't think this way. Some of our parents, they might have, and we try to help one another as well as we go along. But our parents never said in a way, don't think this way, think that way. Or it was more oppressive in terms of don't do this. What about do this way? Adopt a new way. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. Overcome that challenge. Because if you overcome the challenge, it will be positive. And what we do with the information that we didn't have, we make it worse. Instead of changing sometimes, we make it worse. Because obviously we didn't have a foundation or a more positive foundation, and we tend to intensify it with more negative things. What is cultivated in one's thinking is spills over into the objective realm and becomes an existential element in one's behavior. It's a product. You're thinking, you live in that way, guess what? It becomes a product. Consequently, there will be consequences. You can't run from it. You can't run from it. And again, I go back to the principle because the ideal here tonight is to be positive. If you start your day believing that you will have a good day, right? You verbalized it positively what you want from life. There is no way that you will be able to conduct your day in the same manner if you're not thinking positively. One thing comes with the other. So Joanna DeAngelo is certainly right when she is connecting all of these ideas together, and they do not work independently. Thought is a generating source and a conducting dynamo from life. Look, the life has a larger L, to life. We studied last year the book Thought and Life. We know this. We got it. We mastered. I shouldn't say mastered, but we visited, right? But we have seen this before. Energy is present everywhere, wanting for thought to command, waiting, for thought to command and direct it. If there is anything that I like about this chapter, is this passage over here. We have energies at our disposal. We have an environment at our disposal. When we talk about the idea of believing and you're engaging into that ideal, isn't that amazing? I don't know, it really, to me, is something it blows my mind that if we're here constructing this environment, or let's be humble and say connecting with this environment because I think it was constructed by higher minds, it's an amazing thing. We are part of it. We chose to be part of this environment. We could be doing many other things that others are doing, but we chose to be here. When you're reading a book, when you're washing your dishes, when you're cleaning your home, when you're taking a shower, you are manipulating the environment. You are manipulating life in a positive way. Many other people, they're doing everyday things, the negative things, but we choose to do the right things. And if there's anything more liberating than this, I don't know. Because we are co-creators. We are individuals that we are inherited this ability to change the environment. And we may think, oh, yes, we can do great things. We all can do great things. But what about the small things that we don't value? All those who allow themselves to be led by pessimism and depression create morbid states and get caught in the webs of entirely avoiding pain. By a process of natural affinity, they tune into illnesses and open gaps in their immunity for the onset of afflicting ailments and disorders. The constant bombardment against the delicate mechanism of the emotions and the physical body ends up disrupting their harmony, thereby producing imbalances that facilitate the entry of degenerative agents. Devoid yourself of positive things, and you will see what will happen to you. If you have a meal after a tough discussion, guess what? You're not going to feel well afterwards. If you have an argument before you go to bed, guess what? It's going to take a little longer for you to go to bed and sleep. And if you sleep, you're going to be waking up every 5 minutes, right? So why do we allow ourselves to engage with these negative things? Joanna DeAngelo brings another that we're not going to bring here directly, another point to this passage, which is what Spiritism brings to us. When we think positively, what we do, as she's saying here, when we think negatively, it hurts us. But when we think positively as well, we connect with higher minds. She says in a negative way, and I'm bringing the positive now, because if you're thinking negatively, you're going to connect with spirits, incarnated one and discarnated ones, that are thinking negatively. However, the opposite is true. If we think positively, if we think rightly, guess what? We will connect with minds that are thinking alike. And I can blame, yes, there are a lot of obsessors, there are a lot of, because we have our friends from the past that we didn't do right? They're with us. We can all acknowledge. But what am I doing with it now? What kind of effort am I putting to this idea of thinking rightly, despite the fact that everything is negative around me? To finalize, meditating rightly And it's unfortunate that Paula is not here with us tonight. She actually sent me an email very nicely, saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be with you guys tonight, but I wanted her to be here because she would help with this idea here. She always brings this amazing reminder that we need to meditate more. And it is true. Once more, I'm not 100% on this. And when I read it, at first I was like, wow, I need to stop more. Have a moment. Really dive into ourselves. As we were talking about the thinking rightly, in the book Action and Reaction, the book Action and Reaction came to mind, where right at the beginning of the opening chapters, we were reminded by Andrea Louise on how the spirits were projecting their beliefs and their negativity as well on the walls, on what was happening to them, on what they had inside of them. And we do this day in and day out, right? And it would be very scary to think or to even sometimes acknowledge that that happens to us if it were to be stamped on the walls of our homes, of our environments, right? The way we think, or the negative things that we carry inside of us, the scares that we have inside of us that we don't care to get rid of. Number one, because we don't know how, and number two, because we're too entangled into it, right? So how do we do it? Stop and meditate. It's that simple. Do we have to sit in a lotus position? Do we have to do what others are doing? Well, it would be appropriate, right? Because the physical body impacts us so much, really have a toll on us, that if we don't stop and truly relax, it's going to be hard for us to stop and relax our minds, relax our hearts. So it's recommendable, 100% recommendable, that we truly get some kind of teaching, get some kind of help. Joana de Angelis have, in Portuguese and English as well, CDs and other ways for us to follow so that we can meditate. But meditation is the only way that we will be able to get rid of the negative things of the past or what we have created in this life. Because you have to replace the negative thoughts with positive ones. And it has to be repetitive. I used to question when individuals from our brothers and sisters from other religions, how they use the mantras, the prayers, the repetitive prayers. And I used to, is that necessary? And for quite some time, I had that inside of me, and I was like, okay, one day it will come to me. In the moment of despair, that's what keeps these individuals in the right path. And I start using it. Sometimes I have to say the same things over and over and over and over. So if that's what gets you there, guess what? Do it. Stop and do it. One of the other ways that I like to share as well, that I like to meditate, is by doing something physically. Seriously. It's hard to say that men can concentrate in several things, but I can do it to a certain point. To a certain point. So cleaning the house, or doing something, fixing something in the house, or cutting the grass, whatever that may be, that gets your mind going, that whatever you develop, skill that you develop is a second nature, that you can get your mind and start thinking about, why did I do that? Why am I upset with this thought, with this invitation? And I say invitation because sometimes people invite us to deal with certain things that we don't want to deal, right? And we get upset. So what really pulls my chain, right? All those questions we can do as we're meditating. Fix on the panels of the memory due to a pernicious mental education or a huge number of unhappy scenes, reproduce reproachable acts and inferior aspirations. And that is why meditation is brushed aside as being too hard. If I were to ask everybody here, let's stop right now and let's meditate. Some of us will start falling asleep. Some of us will be thinking about what's going to happen tonight. Some of us will be thinking about tomorrow. or whatever problem we left at home. Later on, if we were to be persistent, about an hour into the meditation, you either will get up or say, you know what, let me listen to what Leo is saying after we wake up from our little nap. It's serious, guys. It happens. How many times I also sat down to pray or to meditate, and next thing I know, or let's say the next morning, I was like, what was I again? Where was I again? Because we not conduct our minds to stop and do it. I remember Divaldo Franco talking about, going through the different talks or the studies that he had to conduct to present and to be as eloquent as he is with Spiritism. At night, when he has to study and he's tired, he gets up and he just goes through the night studying. It's not easy because your body's telling you, oh gosh, go to bed, go to bed. Well, let's get up, let's do it. If meditating means that you have to stand up and sit still and think about what you need to change, the negative things that you have inside of us, let us do so. But we need to change. It's not about the way you stay or the way you sit, but what or how you will do it to get these things out of ourselves. However, all one has to do is to change the directions of one's mental habits, and the foundations for meditation can be laid. Out of bad habit, when something bad happens, people let themselves be consumed by it. They give into it, comment on it, repeat it, and give it roots. Whereas the right course of action is the complete opposite. But when something good and useful happens, they seldom analyze, internalize, and relive it. Instead, they replace it with something else that is unpleasant, holding on to the latter in detriment of the former. It is only natural that, unaccustomed to reflecting on goodness, peace and health and joy, people find it difficult to meditate rightly. We give life to it. We see the negative things hitting social media. We see on how fast negative thoughts, negative ideals, news travels. We have a saying in Brazil that it's again related to cars again, that car was faster than bad news. That element was faster than bad news because it flies. It truly flies. Positive things does not give news. That's why when we turn on the news, again, certain channels, all that you see is negative things, right? And I agree with Isabella because she doesn't like to watch the news, and sometimes we have to stay informed. She's like, I don't like to watch the news because all that you see is negative things. It is true, but there are certain things that we have to know, not to engage into it or to give life, but to prevent ourselves from following it. And if somebody says something at work or whatever, you diffuse it. You bring the positive side, right? You train your mind to look at the positive side. Let's learn something from this, right? To finalize, meditation is the use of concentration in the inner search for God with determination and perseverance. Its only goal is to experience the divine flow and know God, sense Him, and feed on His energy. It is the state of mental stillness. Meditation replenishes wholesome energies, restoring the harmony of one's psyche, and the psyche restores the harmony of the physical body. And those who meditate believe, want, talk, operate, live, strive, and think rightly, acquiring the values necessary for salvation. At this stage, they surrender and no longer live. It is Christ who lives in them. This is what Joana de Angelis is laying ahead of us, saying, follow these steps so we can get to plenitude. Let me read one more thing to you and close with Emmanuel, when he says the following: "For many millennia, ordinary people have been eating, drinking, sleeping, and acting without making fundamental changes in society. However, a blessed light has shone on the earth for the last 20 centuries, spreading Christ's teachings and inviting us to ascend to the peaks of higher spirituality. But not everyone realizes this, although it does involve everyone. Even so, for those who delight in the extraordinary blessings, the Master's challenge issues forth, asking us what we are doing that is out of the ordinary." Because thinking the way other people are thinking, doing the things that other people are thinking, putting the efforts that we have put forth just like yesterday, is not taking us anywhere. Because we can still see our situation, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but a true analysis of where am I? The same way we asked, how do I believe? How do I want? How do I operate? Let us look at our general situation. When I say general meaning, let's look at ourselves, right? And what am I doing for the environment? And how am I connecting with the environment as well? Is it the same thing? We see progress, yes, but can we do better? And I think, or I should say, to be positive with my words and the way I'm thinking, I am sure that these 8 steps that Joanna de Angelis is bringing to us is a great start. Avoiding the negative, because we have to acknowledge what has been done thus far, so we can act better, and inviting ourselves to do things in a different way. As Daniel liked to say, let's change the team over here, because it's not winning. Any coach, they see a deficiency in one area of our lives, of the team, they do what? They change it. Let's kind of rotate things a little bit more. Let's try this different approach. And we should do the same thing. Starting with small, different, in different areas. On that note, I'd like to open up for questions, comments that you may have. And if there is an area that you think that you have worked on that is connected with one of these 8 pathways, please share, because we all need help. Daniel, am I on the right one, A2?
No,
Johnny.
something that you said that the other day I was thinking about Haroldo, when the way that he puts the ideas, and he repeats sometimes 2 or 3 times the same sentence, and you start to get so into it that starts to meditate. It's not afterwards, it's right there. So the guy turned to you and said this, and he repeats, and you said, oh my. So at the beginning I didn't understand what kind of technique, but then when he started to do this, but of course to the best points, I thought that was a good way to make us reflect. And I think sometimes, like when I do the God at home, I said, okay, so you're saying this,
right?
And right there, I said, you know what? That's a technique to make you reflect on the moment. You just read. Did I understand what I read? Let me say again. This is what he's saying. And remember, the one that caught my attention most was the son that comes back.
Mm-hmm. The prodigal son?
The prodigal son. That the way, when it finished, you said, oh no, it's gone. And it's
Good
so
point.
Interesting, you know what I mean?
It is
that
true.
like the repetition, because,
yes,
that's something there, positive.
That's a good point that you bring, because we can apply this in our lives. I would call it the exhaustive critical thinking, that you exhaust, we think that we exhaust. Because when we see Emmanuel come in, on a small passage of the Bible, saying things that we would never think that would be there to think about that passage, we stop and say, wait a minute, I need to learn quite a bit. I need to exhaust this topic even more. What comes to mind as well is how many times did Jesus ask Peter, do you love me? Was it once? Was it twice? No, it was 3 times. Did he really get it? Even after the 3rd time he was asked, do you love me? Why is that so? And when we go back to these topics that we have, this pathway, many times have we exhausted these ideas of thinking rightly, of speaking rightly, all of these things that we're like, oh, okay, I do this, but are you really doing it? Or are you following, or are we following what we see out there? So, good point. It's definitely a way, as again, we have and esteem Haroldo, the way he brings these messages to us. It's when he can connect and bring our understanding to the level of Emmanuel is just amazing, because he's a really hard to study of a student of Emmanuel's teaching. So definitely is a positive way.
Love
Anyone?
the faces.
Yes.
Faces.
It makes you. Yasko.
I believe if you can put back, I think is correct effort. Yeah, I think that phrase about the immune system somewhere.
Which one?
Where was the immune system? No, so it's not this one. No, it was more to the end.
Towards the end?
No, next. Let me see.
Oops.
Well, anyway, that she says the pessimism, about the pessimism, and that's
Right.
one. Yeah.
Oh, all chosen, okay. All those, okay.
I think she's very, very, very tough on that, because actually, yes, it's not only this mental, imbalance that we have. Sometimes we are so anxious, sometimes we're depressed, that will change our immune system.
Right.
We tend to think. But I saw in the Facebook that many of those progressive degenerative disease, like MS, multiple sclerosis, ALS, it is a defect in the immune system. And we tend to blame environment, what we eating, what we are breathing. But no, I was thinking if is what we are thinking. Because she put exactly there in thinking rightly. So we know that depends on what we think, because thinking is a continuous process. We don't stop thinking. We keep thinking.
And she says that here.
So if we do that, imagine what change in the physiology, in the hormone, in this immune system we're making.
Right.
Because it's a continued burst, that we are doing there. So, and like Candace Pert has a book that is called Molecules of Emotion. So for each subtle difference in emotion, we have a different bucket
Right.
of molecules that will not only change the brain, but will change the immune system.
Right.
That
Bring
gives
the
us
microphone down.
that give us the protection.
Right.
So they're finding that is a little defect in some kind of T cells, which is part of the immune system, that is defective in the ALS patient. I wonder who put that defect.
Yes.
What is the cause of that burst? We know because they always have some crisis. Those degenerative disease. Sometimes it gets worse. Comes, and the stress is one of the reason. Of course they say some allergen or whatever, but for sure stress and our state of mind, state of thinking, is doing this. So I think she's harsh there, but I think she's correct. Open the gaps in their immunity for the onset of afflicting ailments and disorders.
Yes. Thank you. Great point, Yasko. And to complement on that is to get to this state that you were saying that's so detrimental, right? Or that the suffering is so harsh, is because things got to or stage that the consequences are that. The simple is the product is that, right? The negativity, the heart. Did that start overnight? No. Little by little. Little by little. I start thinking today, oh, it's too hot outside. Or it's too cold, and then you engage another thought, and you engage another thought. And then you connect with something or somebody who is thinking the same way, right? And then you go to the doctor. And then. Because if we don't think about it, then we're going to blame who? Somebody else, or we're going to blame God. And what kind of God are we believing that will inflict this pain on me? So we have to go back and rescue, where did it start? On top of that, she says something that I didn't bring here because I believe everybody knows, but it's important to say. Of course, conventional therapies do help with the recovery of health and its relative maintenance. However, only the internal factors that account for emotional and social behavior can create the conditions that support a permanent state of well-being. Eradicating causes of pain or providing new compensatory ones if the former have not yet been eradicated, thus promoting a structural balance. And guess what? The suffering helps. If we're worried about something, if we're going a tough condition, guess what? We're not going to allow ourselves time to do other damaging ideals. Something else that I like to joke about it. Where is the most safest place not to spend money? Bringing back the financial life now. When you're at work. When you're being productive. Because if you're working, you're making money, right? You're taking your resources, your energy, your thought, your feelings, and you're working. Whereas if you sit at home, you're going to think about something, You're going to think that you need something. I know the ladies are, laughing now. But it's how are we directing? The joke stands for how are we directing our thoughts? How are we directing our energy? Because we have resources. We have energies waiting for us to manipulate. Not in a negative way. Let's not use manipulation in a negative way, but to conduct, right? To analyze. If I do this, this will be my profit, right? If I engage in this investment, this is what's going to happen. Propose to yourself so we can finalize and go on into our evening. Propose a better life to yourself. We have the right, we have the duty with ourselves, and then obviously with the environment and God, to propose something better for ourselves. Think as if you're going to live 100 more years, or as if we will discarnate tonight. One will tell us that our consequences, the consequences of our acts, will impact ourselves at 30 years from now. The same, on the other side, if we discarnate, if we don't change, we're going to be the same way. We're going to be living and facing the same struggles that we don't want to face right now. One is a positive, one is a negative. So we need to change if it's not bringing good fruits. Next time we meet, hopefully, we will be discussing the process of self-healing, because we gave pathways, and then Joanna DeAngelo is going to talk about what is the self-healing inside of me that I need to put forth. What is it? And I'll invite you guys to think the process. What is the process of self-healing? Much like I would like also for you to think, and I can send you that list for all of you to think about the 8 pathways. Put in your refrigerator. It's funny, right? Because we put things on the refrigerator. Why? Let's not go there, right? But put in your bathroom, right? Sometimes when you're too worried about, oh, this wrinkle, or this thing, you look at it and say, oh, there's something higher for me to think about, more elevated for me to think about it, right? That rejuvenates, thank you. Or put in your living room. And people, when they come to your house, they're gonna say, operate rightly. Well, what is this? And then you should have a conversation about it, right? You're exercising. So I hope that we get as much as we can from this message that Joanna Dion is bringing to us. I will repeat again, not only for us here, but for those following us online, to read the book. Read the book and read the book. I would love to give continuation to this study in a more elevated way when we finish this discussion this year, in a group, perhaps, effort, because it's teachings for, they're all teachings for not only one lifetime, but for eternity. On that note, we would like to propose that tonight we do a meditation. Don't fall asleep, okay?
Snore.
Don't snore, right? Daniel, if you would like.